The grand narrative of human history is a familiar one, a slow, arduous climb from the stone axe to the silicon chip. It's a story of linear progress, of humanity gradually awakening to the secrets of science and engineering, step by painstaking step. This is the timeline etched into the bedrock of our understanding, a story that is comfortable, logical, and accepted. Yet, in the quiet corners of the world, hidden in dusty museum vaults or submerged beneath the waves, lie whispers of another story. They take the form of artifacts that simply should not exist, objects of impossible complexity, tools of inexplicable precision, and devices that demonstrate a knowledge of science and the cosmos that seems wildly out of place. These are the glitches in the timeline, the uncomfortable questions that history struggles to answer. Mainstream thought often dismisses them as ritualistic objects, misinterpretations, or simply anomalies. But what if they are not anomalies at all? What if they are pieces of a much larger puzzle, evidence of a past far more advanced than we have ever been led to believe? This is a journey into the world of forbidden archaeology, an exploration of the tools and technologies that defy their time. We will investigate the artifacts that suggest our ancestors were not primitive, but were the inheritors, or perhaps the survivors, of a lost technological dawn. To begin this journey, we must first look past the comfortable narrative and dare to ask the profound question: what if our history books have only told us half the story? The first piece of evidence awaits, not in a dusty tomb, but in the silent, watery depths of the Mediterranean.
In the year 1901, a team of Greek sponge divers, sheltering from a violent storm off the coast of the remote island of Antikythera, made a discovery that would forever alter our perception of the ancient world. Deep beneath the waves, nearly 150 feet down in the crushing dark, lay the ghostly silhouette of a Roman-era shipwreck. For months, they retrieved the treasures scattered across the seafloor: marble statues, fine pottery and jewelry, and among the treasures, a formless, corroded lump of calcified bronze, no larger than a modern laptop. For decades, it sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, largely ignored, an unremarkable piece of wreckage, perhaps a fragment of a statue or a piece of the ship itself. The mainstream view, when any was offered at all, was that it was likely a simple navigational tool, maybe a type of astrolabe. The very notion that it could be something more was dismissed by the academic consensus. The historical narrative was clear. The kind of intricate, geared machinery needed for complex calculations simply did not exist in the 1st century BCE. That level of mechanical engineering belonged to the great European clockmakers of the 14th century, more than 1,000 years in the future. To suggest otherwise was to venture into the realm of fantasy. The artifact was an inconvenient puzzle, best left unsolved. But the truth has a way of waiting to be found. The breakthrough came not with a chisel or a brush, but with the invisible gaze of 21st century technology. Using high-resolution X-ray tomography and advanced digital imaging, scientists were finally able to peer inside the corroded mass, revealing the ghost of a machine hidden within. And what they saw was breathtaking. It was not a simple tool. It was a symphony of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, arranged with a miniaturized precision that was, by all accounts, impossible. This was not a mere astrolabe. It was a sophisticated mechanical computer. The dials on its face tracked the intricate dance of the cosmos. One gear, turning once every 19 years, perfectly modeled the metonic cycle of the moon. Another, with a subtle pin and slot mechanism, accounted for the moon's variable speed, a complex astronomical theory that wouldn't be described by Johannes Kepler for another 1,500 years. The device could accurately predict solar and lunar eclipses down to the very hour. It tracked the calendar, the positions of the sun and moon against the zodiac, and even the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. It was, in essence, a portable clockwork universe, a mechanical codex of astronomical knowledge that surpassed anything known to exist for the next millennium.
So, how do we explain this impossible object? The existence of the Antikythera mechanism doesn't just challenge the timeline of technology, it shatters it. It suggests that our understanding of the ancient Greeks is profoundly incomplete. This was likely not a singular, miraculous invention. Instead, it is almost certainly the last surviving example of a long tradition of sophisticated mechanical engineering, a tradition that has been almost entirely wiped from the historical record. Perhaps the legendary works of Archimedes were not just theories, but physical, working machines of similar complexity. Perhaps workshops across the Hellenistic world were producing these cosmic calculators, a lineage of knowledge lost to the fires of war, the burning of libraries, and the simple decay of time. The mechanism is a tangible echo from a forgotten age of genius. It proves that at least one ancient civilization possessed a level of technological prowess that we are only just beginning to comprehend. It forces us to wonder, if they could build a mechanical computer 2,000 years ago, what else could they build? What other marvels of science and engineering have been lost to the silence of the centuries? The Greeks, it seems, could map the heavens with clockwork precision. But in the sun-baked lands of Egypt, another civilization was allegedly pursuing an even more elusive power, the power to conquer the darkness itself.
Deep beneath the magnificent temple of Hathor at Dendera, a place of profound ancient worship, lies a series of cramped subterranean crypts. To access them, one must descend through a narrow passage into the suffocating darkness, far from the light of the Egyptian sun. It is here, carved into the stone walls of these hidden chambers, that we find a set of reliefs so strange, so out of place that they have fueled a fierce debate for decades. The carvings depict figures holding what appear to be massive, transparent bulbs. Inside each bulb, a long, wavy snake uncoils from a lotus flower at the base, and a thick cable runs from that base to a rectangular box, an object known as a jed pillar. To the mainstream Egyptologist, the interpretation is purely symbolic, an open and shut case of religious iconography. The scene, they say, represents a creation myth. The snake is a symbol of the god Harsamtus, emerging from a lotus blossom, a classic Egyptian symbol of creation and rebirth. The jed pillar is a well-known hieroglyph representing stability and the spine of the god Osiris. It is a powerful mythological image meant to be understood metaphorically, its placements in the crypt imbuing the temple's foundations with sacred power. There is no mystery here, only the complex and beautiful language of pharaonic religion. But a profound and practical problem hangs in the air of these ancient chambers, as real as the stone itself. There is no soot. The ceilings of the Dendera crypts, like the inner chambers of the pyramids and the intricate tombs in the Valley of the Kings, are remarkably clean. Ancient Egyptians were master artists, covering these hidden spaces with vibrant, detailed paintings. To do this work, they would have needed a source of light. Yet the torches or oil lamps available to them would have choked the air with smoke and left a thick layer of black residue on every surface. So how did they see in the pitch-black depths? This is where an alternative and far more radical theory emerges. What if the Dendera reliefs are not a myth, but a schematic? What if we are looking at a blueprint for an ancient source of electric light? Proponents of this theory point to the uncanny resemblance between the carvings and early electrical discharge tubes, like the Crookes tube. In this view, the bulb is a glass envelope, the lotus flower an insulating socket, the snake a representation of the plasma filament arcing within the tube, and the cable a power cord. The entire scene transforms from a myth into a technical diagram. If this interpretation holds any truth, it fundamentally rewrites our understanding of the past. It would mean the ancient Egyptians had not only discovered electricity, but had harnessed it to create sophisticated lighting systems 2 millennia before Thomas Edison. This would not be a simple progression of technology, but a staggering leap, suggesting a body of scientific knowledge that has been utterly lost to time. It would imply that our modern electrical age is not a new dawn, but a rediscovery of a long-forgotten science. Of course, no physical proof of an ancient light bulb has ever been unearthed from the sands of Egypt. The theory remains speculative, an electrifying possibility based on visual interpretation and the enduring mystery of the soot-free tombs. The carvings remain an enigma, a silent testament on a crypt wall, but they force us to ask a critical question. If the ancient Egyptians could indeed command an unseen force to generate light, what other impossible forces could they command? Perhaps the most compelling evidence of their lost power isn't just carved on the walls, but is present in the very stones from which those walls were built, cut and shaped with a precision that defies all conventional explanation.
While the mysteries of ancient knowledge can be debated, some evidence is so tangible, so overwhelmingly physical, that it can be measured, touched, and held. It is written not on papyrus, but in the hardest stone on earth. To see it, we must travel back to Egypt, to the ancient necropolis of Saqqara. Beneath the sands lies a vast subterranean network of tunnels known as the Serapeum. Carved from the bedrock, these dark galleries hold a secret that is as massive as it is precise. Lining the tunnels are 25 colossal black boxes, each carved from a single block of Aswan granite and weighing up to 100 tons, including the lid. Their presence is breathtaking, their purpose shrouded in mystery. The accepted Egyptologist explanation is that these are sarcophagi, created to house the remains of the sacred Apis bulls, which were worshipped as incarnations of the god Ptah. According to this view, generations of ancient Egyptian craftsmen toiled with simple bronze chisels, diorite pounders, and sand abrasives to slowly and painstakingly carve these monoliths. The sheer scale of the achievement is attributed to the unwavering patience, devotion, and limitless manpower of the pharaonic state. The craftsmanship is acknowledged as masterful, but it is seen as the ultimate expression of Bronze Age technology, a testament to what human hands can do when given enough time. But when we move beyond sheer awe and begin to apply modern metrology to these boxes, the conventional explanation begins to crumble. Engineers and precision machinists who have examined the boxes report a level of accuracy that is, frankly, impossible to achieve with the accepted ancient toolkit. The interior and exterior surfaces are polished to a mirror-like finish and are flat to within a tolerance of 2/10,000th of an inch. To put that in perspective, that's a level of precision modern machine shops would struggle to replicate on such a massive piece of granite today, requiring enormous diamond-tipped cutting tools and laser measurement. The corners, both inside and out, are perfectly square. The lids, weighing 30 tons apiece, are cut with such accuracy that they form a near-perfect airtight seal with the box. Furthermore, the tool marks left behind do not speak of simple hand tools. On the floor of one box, we see strange scooped-out patterns with a regular curvature, inconsistent with the straight edge of a chisel. Inside some sarcophagi from the same era, we find evidence of perfectly round core drill holes, whose helical grooves indicate a drill feed rate hundreds of times faster than what a hand-powered abrasive drill could ever accomplish. The physical evidence etched into the granite itself seems to scream of a lost, high-speed mechanical technology. And this mystery of impossible stonework is not confined to the Nile Valley. Half a world away, high in the Bolivian Andes at an altitude of 13,000 feet, lies the desolate ruin of Pumapunku. Here, scattered across the arid plateau, are the shattered remains of andesite and diorite blocks, stones so hard they approach the level of diamond.
What was done to these stones defies easy explanation. We see the famous H blocks, intricately shaped with multiple interlocking planes and perfectly flat surfaces, looking more like they were cast from a mold than carved from stone. The mainstream attribution goes to the Tiwanaku culture, predecessors to the Inca, who again were supposed to have achieved these results with simple stone hammers and sand. But look closer. The stone is cut with grooves that are perfectly straight, some only millimeters wide, and maintain a uniform depth across their entire length. We find incredibly precise, small diameter drill holes perforating this impossibly hard material. How could a primitive culture, without a written language or the wheel, achieve a level of stone-cutting precision that would be the envy of a modern construction company? The alternative theory suggests that the tool marks tell the true story. The precision, the perfect right angles, the intricate interior cuts, and the smooth machined finish all point to the use of advanced power tools. Whether these were enormous saws, high-speed routing machines, or even some form of sonic or vibration-based technology is unknown. But the results at both the Serapeum and Pumapunku are strikingly similar. Two cultures separated by an ocean and millennia, displaying the same impossible manufacturing fingerprints. This suggests not a series of isolated coincidences, but a global legacy of forgotten high technology. The stone itself is the witness. The question then is not whether these structures could be built with simple tools, but whether the evidence we see is consistent with that method. For many, the answer is a resounding no. What unknown energy source could have powered such incredible machines? And if our ancestors possessed a technology so powerful it could shape the very bones of the earth, did they also understand the more subtle forces of nature? Perhaps the next clue lies not in a 100-ton box, but in a small, unassuming clay pot from ancient Mesopotamia.
From the monumental scale of precision-cut granite, we now turn to an object so humble it could easily be overlooked. Our journey takes us to the dusty archives of the National Museum of Iraq in the 1930s. It was there that archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig stumbled upon a collection of curious artifacts unearthed from a 2,000-year-old Parthian settlement near Baghdad. Among them was a small, 6-inch tall terracotta jar. Sealed at the top with a bitumen plug, it contained a cylinder of rolled copper, and suspended in the center of that cylinder, held in place by the seal, was a simple iron rod. It was unassuming, mysterious, and officially catalogued with no specific purpose. For years, the prevailing academic theory was that these jars were nothing more than storage vessels for sacred scrolls. In this view, a scroll of papyrus or parchment would be wrapped around the central iron rod, and the copper cylinder would serve as a protective sheath, perhaps believed to offer some preservative quality. This explanation is simple, requires no revision of the historical timeline, and places the object comfortably within the known technological limits of the Parthian Empire. It was a neat solution that effectively closed the case on these peculiar little jars. They were simply scroll holders. But an object's true purpose is not always what it seems. The crucial question, the one that reopened the entire mystery, was disarmingly simple. What happens if you treat it not as a jar, but as a device? Following Koenig's initial hypothesis, replicas of the ancient artifact were carefully constructed. Scientists filled the jar with a simple acidic liquid, an electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, substances readily available to the ancient Parthians. The result was astonishing and undeniable. The moment the electrolyte was added, the device produced a steady, reliable electrical current of about half a volt. It wasn't a scroll jar. It was a galvanic cell. It was, in effect, a battery, created 2 millennia before Alessandro Volta was credited with its invention.
This shocking discovery opened a floodgate of new questions. If the ancient Parthians had batteries, what on earth were they powering them with? The leading theory is that they were used for a process called electroplating or gilding. By connecting several batteries in series to increase the voltage, craftsmen could have used electrolysis to apply a micro-thin layer of gold or silver onto less precious metals, creating exquisite jewelry and statuettes. Some artifacts from the region do appear to have been gilded in a way that is difficult to explain with simple mercury-based methods. Other theories suggest a medical use, perhaps a form of electroacupuncture, or for use in religious rituals, where priests could use the mysterious tingling sensation from the device to awe followers and demonstrate a connection to the divine. The Baghdad battery is a profound technological anomaly. It suggests that knowledge of electrochemical principles is not a modern invention, but a rediscovery of a science that once flourished in the ancient world and then was completely forgotten. Like the Antikythera mechanism, it represents a branch of scientific knowledge that appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, and then vanished without a trace. It proves that our ancestors were not just builders and farmers, but were also subtle experimenters, capable of unlocking the hidden forces of nature. The physical evidence for this lost technology, from colossal stone boxes to these simple clay jars, is compelling. It presents a world far more advanced than the one described in our history books. But what if the most incredible evidence isn't buried in the ground at all? What if it's been hiding in plain sight, written down in the pages of ancient manuscripts describing machines so advanced they could not only master the earth, but could conquer the skies themselves? Our investigation so far has been grounded in the tangible, in stone, metal, and clay. But the final category of evidence is perhaps the most profound, for it is not an object, but an idea, preserved in the ancient Sanskrit texts of the Indian subcontinent. Great epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are treasure troves of Hindu philosophy and mythology. Within their verses, we read of heroic gods, powerful demons, and epic battles. And in these battles, the gods and heroes take to the skies in magnificent flying crafts known as vimanas. For centuries, the world has viewed these accounts as pure fantasy, the ancient equivalent of science fiction. The mainstream historical and literary view is that vimanas are nothing more than poetic metaphors for spiritual travel or imaginative flights of fancy, no different than the flying carpets of Arabian lore or the winged horses of the Greeks. This perspective is further solidified when considering the most famous text on the subject, the Vaimanika Shastra. Scholars have convincingly demonstrated that this specific text, which reads like a detailed technical manual, has no ancient source and was likely composed in the early 20th century. In the academic world, the case is closed. Vimanas are myth, period. But to dismiss the entire concept so easily is to ignore the sheer, startling detail found in the genuinely ancient epics. While the Vaimanika Shastra itself may be a modern creation, it could represent an attempt to reconstruct a much older and very real tradition. The descriptions of Vimanas in the Mahabharata are not vague. They speak of two-storied chariots with many windows, ejecting fiery missiles. They are described as being powered by a heavenly liquid, a potential reference to a fuel source, and capable of traveling vast distances, even into space. The Ramayana describes a vimana as being able to fly at the speed of wind and giving a melodious sound. These are not simple myths. They are peppered with what sound like functional, observational details. It is when we delve into the concepts preserved in texts like the Vaimanika Shastra that the true, mind-bending scope of this lost knowledge comes into focus. Whether ancient or not,
The text describes a complete science of aviation. It outlines the training required for pilots, warning of everything from enemy attacks to bird strikes. It details the construction of the crafts, mentioning specific types of heat-resistant lightweight metals and alloys. It describes different classes of vimanas, like the Shakuna Vimana, which is said to have intricate hinged wings, and the Tripura Vimana, a larger craft capable of traveling in the air, on land, and underwater. The most baffling sections describe the propulsion systems. The texts speak of harnessing the power of the sun through giant mirrors and crystals. More famously, they detail the use of mercury vortex engines. They describe a system where electrified mercury, heated from below, creates a powerful spinning vortex of energy that provides lift and propulsion. While this sounds like alchemy to our modern ears, is it possible that we are reading an archaic description of a forgotten physics? Are we seeing an attempt to explain an advanced plasma or ion engine using the only scientific language available to the authors? If we entertain the possibility that these texts are not fiction, but fractured history, it connects directly to the other mysteries we've explored. A civilization capable of precision machining on a global scale and harnessing electrochemical energy would surely not be earthbound. The Vimana texts could represent the missing piece of the puzzle, the theoretical knowledge that accompanied the physical hardware we find scattered across the globe. It suggests a lost worldwide civilization that had achieved a level of scientific understanding that rivaled, and in some ways perhaps even surpassed, our own. This knowledge wasn't just mechanical, it was holistic, combining physics, engineering, and a deep understanding of natural forces. The stories of sky chariots and flying gods are not unique to India. They echo in the myths and legends of nearly every ancient culture on Earth. Are these all just independent flights of human imagination, or are they a shared, deeply buried memory of a time when humanity could actually fly? We've now seen machines that mapped the cosmos, stones cut with a divine precision, jars that created an unseen power, and now texts that describe a lost age of aviation. Taken individually, they are fascinating curiosities, but taken together, what picture do they paint? What does this pantheon of impossible artifacts truly tell us about the story of humanity and the past we thought we knew?
We have journeyed from the bottom of the Aegean Sea to the sun-scorched plateaus of the Andes. We have descended into the subterranean tombs of Egypt and peered into the pages of ancient Sanskrit texts. We have seen a bronze computer that maps the heavens, monolithic stones cut with a precision that rivals our own, simple clay jars that produce an electric spark, and literary blueprints for machines that could fly. Each artifact is a ghost from a time that should not have existed, a whisper of a forgotten science. Individually, perhaps each of these mysteries could be explained away. The academic world offers plausible, if sometimes strained, explanations for each piece of the puzzle. They are ritual objects, mythological allegories, the lucky work of a singular genius, or simply anomalies. But when we step back and view these artifacts not as isolated curiosities, but as a collective body of evidence, the theory of coincidence begins to feel inadequate. A pattern emerges, a global fingerprint of advanced knowledge that appears in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. What this pattern suggests is a breathtaking possibility, a truth that could rewrite every history book on the shelf. It suggests that we are a species with amnesia, that our current technological age is not the first great dawn of human ingenuity, but perhaps the second. These artifacts are the scattered, broken remnants of a lost chapter in the human story, an epic of high science and engineering that rose, flourished, and then fell into ruin so completely that its existence has been almost entirely erased. We are left then with the ultimate mystery. It is not how did they build these things, but rather
How could such profound knowledge be forgotten? What cataclysm, what slow decay, or what deliberate act could wipe the memory of such achievements from the consciousness of humanity, leaving behind only these enigmatic clues? The past is not a dead and settled place. It is a living puzzle, and these impossible tools are an invitation to look again, to question everything we've been told, and to wonder about the true, undiscovered scope of our own history.
The story of humanity, as we are told it, is a grand and linear march of progress. From the first stone tools to the bronze spear, from the Roman aqueduct to the modern skyscraper. Each chapter of our history is neatly filed away, a steady, unbroken climb from primitive beginnings to the technological marvels of our age. It is a story we hold as truth, etched into the pages of our textbooks and displayed behind the polished glass of our most hallowed museums. But what if this story is incomplete? What if, beneath the carefully constructed timeline of our past, there are cracks, anomalies, objects that simply should not exist? Relics of impossible engineering and forgotten science, discovered in places they have no right to be, dated to epochs where they are a paradox. These are the whispers of a different history, one that has been buried, ignored, or misunderstood. They are the echoes from an abyss of time we have long since forgotten how to navigate. For centuries, these confounding artifacts have surfaced, challenging the very bedrock of orthodox history. They hint at a past far more complex, far more advanced, and far more mysterious than we have ever dared to imagine. They are a testament not to a slow, steady climb, but perhaps to a great cycle of rising and falling, of knowledge gained and catastrophically lost. Join us as we pull back the curtain of established history and journey into this abyss. We will examine the evidence for ourselves, the gears that predate their own invention, the sparks of ancient electricity, the blueprints of a forgotten technology. We will ask the forbidden questions and begin our search with a discovery so profound it has been called the very first computer, salvaged from a world that supposedly knew nothing of the kind. In the spring of the year 1900, off the treacherous coast of the Greek island Antikythera, a team of sponge divers made a discovery that would forever alter our perception of the ancient world. They had stumbled upon a Roman-era shipwreck, a treasure trove of bronze and marble statues swallowed by the Aegean Sea 2 millennia ago. For months, they pulled priceless artifacts from the deep, but among the magnificent sculptures of gods and heroes, they recovered something else. A calcified, corroded lump of bronze, roughly the size of a large dictionary, that was mistaken for little more than a rock. It was brought to the surface, cataloged, and then, for the better part of a year, largely forgotten. To the archaeologists of the day, the object was an uninteresting curiosity. The accepted historical narrative was clear. The ancient Greeks were masters of philosophy, art, and geometry, but their technology was rudimentary. They built with levers and stone, not with intricate machinery. The lump was assumed to be a fragment of a statue, or perhaps a piece of a primitive navigational tool, its true nature sealed within a tomb of rock and marine concretion. For decades, it sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, a silent, unassuming footnote to a spectacular discovery. The story of what lay inside was a secret the ancient world was not yet ready to tell. History, as it was written, had no place for it. But the secret would not keep forever. The first crack in its stony shell came in the 1950s, when a historian of science named Derek de Sola Price began a painstaking investigation. He sensed that this was no ordinary artifact. Using the new technology of gamma and X radiography, he peered through the layers of corrosion for the first time, and what he saw was simply impossible. Hidden inside the lump was not stone, but a complex assembly of interlocking gears, not just a few simple cogs, but a sophisticated system of at least 30 precisely machined bronze gears arranged in a dizzying, intricate dance. It was a level of mechanical complexity that was completely alien to the 1st century BC. According to our established timeline, technology this advanced wouldn't appear again on Earth for another 1400 years with the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. The discovery was so jarring, so utterly out of place, that it was met with skepticism and disbelief. It was an anachronism, a ghost of a technology that had no right to exist. As imaging technology advanced, so too did our understanding of this miraculous device. High-resolution CT scans in the 21st century finally unlocked its ultimate secrets, revealing inscriptions and functions that had been invisible for 2 millennia. We now know what this device was. It was a celestial computer of breathtaking genius. Its gears were designed to follow the movements of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets visible to the naked eye. It could predict eclipses with stunning accuracy, tracking the complex 18-year cycle of the moon, known as the Saros cycle. It even accounted for the moon's elliptical orbit using a brilliant and intricate pin and slot mechanism. On its face, a dial showed the Greek zodiac and an Egyptian calendar, while on the back, dials displayed the timing of cosmic events and even the schedule for the ancient Olympic Games. It was, in essence, the cosmos, captured in a box of bronze, a clockwork of the gods.
This presents us with a profound and deeply unsettling problem. How could this exist? The mainstream view must now contend with a physical artifact that violates its own timeline. One theory suggests it was the singular creation of a lost supergenius, perhaps the great Archimedes himself, who was known to have constructed such orreries. In this view, the mechanism was a pinnacle achievement, a lone candle of brilliance that was extinguished when its creator died, its secrets lost to the ages. It's a compelling idea, but it may not be the whole truth. The sheer sophistication of the device suggests something more. Features like its differential gear, a component essential for modern engines and clocks, thought to be invented in the 16th century, imply that this was not a prototype. It was the product of a mature and established tradition of mechanical engineering. It suggests that for generations, brilliant minds in the Hellenistic world were building machines like this, refining their techniques, and passing down a body of scientific and mechanical knowledge that has been almost completely erased from history. We are not looking at the first of its kind. We are looking at the last known survivor. It forces us to wonder, what else did they build? If this is what was on a simple merchant vessel, what marvels of technology lay within the great library of Alexandria before it was burned to the ground? The Antikythera mechanism isn't just an object, it's a phantom. It proves that there is a vast, missing chapter in the story of human innovation. It reveals a forgotten mastery over the physical, mechanical world, a clockwork of the cosmos meticulously crafted by human hands. But what if this was not the only form of lost power the ancients commanded? What if in another corner of the ancient world, they were not just tracking the heavens, but attempting to harness a power far more elemental, a power hidden within the very fabric of nature itself? Our journey now takes us from the depths of the Aegean Sea to the sun-scorched earth of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. It was here, in 1936, just outside modern Baghdad, that the German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was excavating the ruins of a Parthian settlement, a village that stood 2,000 years ago. Amongst the scattered pottery and remnants of daily life, his team uncovered a collection of curious objects. They were small, unassuming terracotta jars, no more than 5 inches tall. Inside each one was a cylinder of rolled copper, and suspended in its center, held in place by an asphalt or bitumen stopper, was a simple iron rod. They were artifacts of a lost age, certainly, but at first glance, they seemed entirely unremarkable.
For years, the official explanation for these strange little jars was both simple and logical. Archaeologists at the Iraq Museum, where they were housed, classified them as storage vessels for sacred texts. In this mainstream view, a scroll of papyrus or parchment would have been wrapped around the central iron rod, then inserted into the protective copper cylinder before being sealed in the clay pot for safekeeping. Over the centuries, the organic scroll material would have completely decomposed, leaving behind only the 3 durable components we see today. It is a neat and tidy explanation, one that requires no leaps of imagination and fits perfectly within the accepted technological limits of the Parthian Empire. Case closed. But a nagging question remained. Why construct a scroll holder in such a peculiar and specific way? The arrangement of the metals, an iron rod inside a copper cylinder, isolated from each other by the stopper, was an unnecessary complication for a simple container. It wasn't until after World War II that a new electrifying possibility was proposed, one that threatened to rewrite a key chapter in the history of science. An engineer, looking at the design, noted its uncanny resemblance to something he knew very well. It was, piece for piece, a blueprint for a galvanic cell, a battery. The terracotta jar is the vessel. The copper cylinder is the positive electrode, the cathode. The iron rod is the negative electrode, the anode. The only missing element is an electrolyte, an acidic liquid to kickstart the chemical reaction. This is where the theory becomes profoundly compelling. What kind of electrolyte would have been available to the ancient Parthians? Simple grape juice, vinegar, or lemon juice, all common substances at the time, would have worked perfectly. When modern scientists build exact replicas of these jars and fill them with such an electrolyte, a remarkable thing happens. They generate a continuous, usable electric current, a small but steady voltage of between 0.5 and 1.5 volts. Suddenly, the strange design is no longer strange. It is efficient. The asphalt stopper is not just a seal against moisture, but an insulator for the terminals. The corrosion found on the original iron and copper artifacts is, to some researchers, consistent with the long-term effects of an electrochemical reaction. We are faced with an unavoidable conclusion. Whether by design or by an extraordinary coincidence, our ancestors in ancient Babylon created a functional battery 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta is credited with its invention.
If we accept this startling possibility, the next question becomes even more mysterious. For what purpose? What would an ancient civilization do with low-voltage electricity? The leading theory is as brilliant as it is elegant: electroplating. By connecting several of these batteries in series, one could generate enough current to perform rudimentary gilding, depositing a microscopically thin layer of gold or silver onto a cheaper base metal like copper. This technique could explain the exquisite and durable plating found on many ancient artifacts, a feat difficult to achieve with simple mercury gilding. To the uninitiated, it would have been a form of alchemy, turning copper into gold with a secret divine power. Other theories suggest a more ritualistic purpose. Imagine a temple priest secretly wiring a metal statue to one of these batteries. A worshiper, touching the idol in reverence, would feel a strange tingle, a mysterious shock, the undeniable touch of a god. The power to create this sensation would have been an incredible tool of influence and control. More speculative theories even propose their use in early forms of medicine, perhaps as a primitive form of electroacupuncture to soothe pain. The Baghdad battery, as it has come to be called, represents a different kind of lost knowledge than the Antikythera mechanism. While the Greek device shows a forgotten mastery of mechanical physics and astronomy, this humble pot suggests a lost understanding of electrochemistry. It is a quiet but powerful piece of evidence that our ancestors were not just thinkers, but tinkerers and experimental scientists. It hints at entire branches of practical knowledge that flourished, and then, somehow, were completely forgotten, leaving behind only these enigmatic sparks
to remind us of what was lost. These humble clay pots suggest the ancients may have captured lightning in a jar, creating small sparks for intricate, hidden purposes. But what if this was only the beginning? What if, in another great civilization, evidence exists that they didn't just create a spark, but sought to conquer the darkness itself on a scale we have never thought possible?
We travel now to the heart of ancient Egypt, to the magnificent Temple of Hathor at Dendera. For centuries, this sprawling complex has stood as a monument to the cosmic beliefs of the pharaohs. Its grand halls and towering columns covered in a library of stone, a tapestry of gods, goddesses, and mythological scenes. It is a place of profound beauty and orthodox history. But to find our next mystery, we must leave the sunlit courtyards behind. We must descend down a narrow, suffocating staircase into the sealed subterranean crypts deep beneath the temple floor. It is here, in the absolute darkness, on a wall hidden from the world for millennia, that we find a carving so strange, so out of place, it has sparked one of the most polarizing debates in modern Egyptology. The scene is unambiguous, yet its meaning is fiercely contested. We see large, elongated, bulb-like objects. Inside each one, a serpent with a wavy body stretches from a lotus flower at the base to the far end. This entire bulb assembly is being held aloft by a figure kneeling on a distinctive pillar. A thick braided line, unmistakably resembling a cable, runs from the lotus flower socket and connects to a square box, upon which the god of the air, Shu, is kneeling. To the mainstream Egyptologists, the interpretation is purely symbolic, a visual retelling of a fundamental Egyptian creation myth. The bulb, they say, represents the primordial womb of the sky goddess Nut. The lotus flower is the symbol of creation, and the serpent emerging from it is the god Harsomtus, a form of Horus, symbolizing the rising sun and the dawn of life. The Jed pillar, they explain, is the spine of the god Osiris, a powerful emblem of stability and power. It is, in their view, a beautiful, complex, and entirely mythological piece of religious art. But what if it's more? What if we are not looking at a myth, but at a machine? This is the question that alternative researchers have been asking for decades, because the carving's resemblance to a modern piece of electrical technology is simply astonishing. The object looks less like a cosmic womb and more like a giant gas discharge tube, specifically a Crookes tube, an early forerunner to the fluorescent light. In this interpretation, the serpent is not a god. It is a perfect representation of the serpentine plasma filament seen arcing through a low-pressure gas tube when an electric current is applied. The lotus flower is no longer just a symbol of creation. It is a perfect depiction of a socket holding the electrode of the lamp. The Jed pillar is no longer merely the spine of a god. Its stacked ribbed design is functionally identical to a modern high-voltage electrical insulator, necessary to isolate the high-voltage device from its user. And the cable connecting it all to a box is a power cord, leading to a generator. The greatest challenge to the mainstream view is not the carving itself, but a profound and persistent mystery found in every sealed tomb and chamber across Egypt: the complete and total absence of soot. The hieroglyphs and paintings that cover these subterranean walls are intricate, colorful, and perfectly preserved. They would have required thousands of hours in absolute pitch-black darkness. The conventional tools available were torches and tallow-burning oil lamps. Yet these methods produced significant amounts of smoke and soot, which would have blackened the ceilings and clouded the pristine artwork. Archaeologists have never found more than the most minuscule traces of it. The theory of using a complex system of reflective copper mirrors to light the deep interiors is impractical and has been shown by experiment to be wholly insufficient. So how did they do it?
How did the ancient Egyptians perfectly illuminate their deepest and most sacred chambers? The serpent in the stone at Dendera provides a stunning, if radical, answer. They didn't need fire because they had light.
This theory proposes that the carving is not a myth, but a blueprint, a schematic hidden in plain sight, depicting a sophisticated, suitless lighting system. This idea gains incredible weight when we remember the Baghdad Battery. Perhaps that small Parthian-era artifact was a descendant of a much older, more advanced Egyptian science. The Egyptians, with their profound knowledge of chemistry and materials, could have easily constructed larger, more powerful batteries or another form of generator depicted as the box in the relief. Engineers and physicists have pointed out that to make such a lamp work, you would need to create a partial vacuum inside the bulb, a feat of high technology in itself, and yet, we know the Egyptians were masters of their craft. If they could hew and place multi-ton blocks of granite with hair's breadth precision, is it truly beyond the realm of possibility that they also mastered the science of the vacuum and the electron? If this interpretation is correct, it changes everything. It reframes the ancient Egyptians not as superstitious builders working by torchlight, but as masters of a forgotten electrical science. It suggests the Great Pyramids and the Valley of the Kings were not decorated in flickering darkness, but were created under the cool, silent, and steady glow of electric light. It is another piece of the puzzle of our lost history, suggesting that the knowledge we pride ourselves on today may only be a rediscovery of secrets that were once commonplace in the age of the pharaohs. The serpent in the stone at Dendera forces us to reconsider the very nature of ancient depictions. It asks us to look at myth not as mere story, but as a possible vessel for lost science, a blueprint hidden in plain sight. But this raises a more profound question. If the Egyptians could embed the secrets of advanced technology within their sacred myths, what happens when a relic is so powerful, so legendary, that it transcends physical evidence entirely, existing only in the realm of myth itself? Can a story alone be evidence of a lost artifact of impossible power? Thus far, our journey has been one of tangible things, of bronze gears and clay pots, of carvings etched in stone. We have examined physical evidence that we can see, touch, and analyze. But now we must travel to a place where evidence becomes elusive, where history dissolves into legend, and where an artifact's immense power may lie not in what it is, but in what it is believed to be. We travel to Japan to seek the truth behind one of the most sacred and mysterious objects on Earth, the sword, Kusanagi no Tsurugi. This grass-cutting sword is one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan, the sacred treasures that legitimize the emperor's divine rule. While the other 2, the mirror and the jewel, are shrouded in reverence, the sword is cloaked in something more, an impenetrable veil of secrecy and awe. The mainstream historical and academic view presents the story of the Kusanagi as Japan's foundational myth, a cornerstone of the Shinto faith. The tale, recorded in the ancient texts of the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, is an epic of cosmic scale. It tells of the powerful storm god Susanoo no Mikoto, who, after being cast out of the heavens, descends to earth. There, he encounters a terrifying 8-headed and 8-tailed serpent, the Yamata no Orochi, which has been terrorizing a family by devouring their daughters. Susanoo, in an act of divine heroism, tricks the beast into drinking vast quantities of sake, and once it is intoxicated, he slays the monster. As he cuts into one of its tails, his own sword strikes something hard, and from within the creature's flesh, he pulls forth a magnificent blade. This is the Kusanagi. He presents this divine sword to his sister, the sun goddess Amaterasu, as a reconciliation gift. In time, it is passed down through her lineage to the first emperor of Japan. To Orthodox historians, this is folklore, a symbolic narrative designed to cement the emperor's divine ancestry and his connection to the gods. The physical object, they argue, is likely a replica, its true nature and location a state secret that serves to maintain the mystique of the imperial house. But the story does not end with myth. Throughout Japanese history, the kusanagi is treated not as a symbol, but as a very real artifact possessing extraordinary power. The legendary 12th prince, Yamato Takeru, was said to have been saved by the sword. When caught in a grass fire set by his enemies, he used the blade to cut down the grass around him, discovering that it could control the wind, allowing him to turn the flames back on his attackers. It is from this historical account that the sword gets its name. Centuries of records tell of the sword being housed at the Atsuta Grand Shrine in Nagoya. Accounts speak of priests who dared to look upon it suffering from curses or illness. One 6th century account claims the original was stolen by a Korean monk, but his ship sank in a storm and the sword was recovered from the seafloor, its divine power refusing to leave Japan. The secrecy surrounding it is absolute. No photograph of it exists, no one alive save for a handful of the highest-ranking priests, and perhaps the emperor himself has ever laid eyes upon it. If it is merely a symbolic replica, why this multi-generational, unbroken tradition of extreme secrecy? Why is it guarded as if it were a literal piece of heaven on earth? This profound reverence forces us to consider alternative possibilities that exist in the space between myth and reality. One theory suggests that the sword is indeed an ancient physical artifact, and that its legend stems from its superior, almost alien metallurgy. Perhaps the kusanagi was forged from a meteorite, its otherworldly iron granting it properties an impossible sharpness and incorruptible sheen that would have seemed nothing short of divine to ancient peoples. The myth of it being found inside a monster from the sky could be a poetic, distorted retelling of its true origin, a weapon forged from a serpent of fire that fell from the heavens. Its power would have been its technological superiority.
A more radical theory looks at the myth more literally. Could the story of a battle with a monstrous entity be a faded memory of something else? Throughout forbidden history, there are tales of powerful artifacts and weapons being given to humanity by non-human intelligences, or sky gods. In this view, the kusanagi is the ultimate out-of-place artifact, a piece of impossibly advanced technology, whose true function may not even be that of a simple weapon. The myth, in this context, is a heavily redacted historical file, the only way our ancestors could describe an event and an object that was utterly beyond their comprehension. The secrecy surrounding it would then be not to protect a myth, but to guard a tangible and perhaps dangerous relic of a forgotten age. The Kusanagi no Tsurugi forces us to confront the very nature of our investigation. We have examined artifacts that challenge history, but the grass-cutting sword challenges the boundary between history and belief itself. It suggests that our most profound myths may not be mere stories, but protective shells built around a core of historical truth too strange or too powerful for conventional records. It is a reminder that the great library of lost knowledge may not only be buried under the sand. Some of it may be hidden in plain sight, disguised as folklore. The legend of Kusanagi no Tsurugi leaves us at the edge of history, staring into the abyss of myth. It is a relic that may not even be physical, yet its power has shaped the destiny of a nation. From a celestial computer in a sunken ship, to a spark of power in a clay pot, to a serpent of light carved in stone, and now to a blade born from a dragon, we have seen how the lines between the possible and the impossible begin to blur. These are not just isolated curiosities. They are pieces of a puzzle, fragments of a past that is profoundly different from the one we were taught.
and they compel us to ask one final crucial question.
What if the past is not a foreign country of primitive peoples, but a shattered mirror, reflecting a distorted image of a world surprisingly like our own? That is the final, crucial question these relics demand we ask. We have journeyed through the wreckage of time and found a mechanical mind ticking with a genius that would not be seen again for 1,000 years. We have uncovered the potential for a forgotten power source contained within the humblest of clay jars. We have gazed upon the stone blueprint of an impossible light, and we have listened to the echoes of a weapon so powerful it could only be remembered as a myth. These are not mere historical footnotes. They are the surviving pages from a great, lost library of human knowledge. They suggest that the steady, linear march of progress we so cherish is an illusion. Instead, the story of humanity may be a cyclical one, a great wheel of ages, with civilizations rising to incredible heights of technological and scientific prowess, only to fall back into darkness, leaving behind just a handful of enigmatic clues to their former glory. We see ourselves as the pinnacle of creation, standing on the summit of history. But what if we are only the latest civilization to reach this peak, unaware of the crumbled ruins of other peaks hidden beneath the clouds of forgotten time? Consider for a moment our own world, a civilization of digital information, of global supply chains, of knowledge stored not on stone, but in the ethereal cloud. How fragile is it all? In the event of a global cataclysm, how much of our story would survive? Future archaeologists might unearth a smartphone, and, with no context for the electricity that powered it or the networks it connected to, declare it a strange religious idol. Our digital libraries would vanish without a trace, our greatest scientific achievements becoming whispers, then myths. The vast majority of our existence would simply cease to be. And so we are left looking at these ancient mysteries not as relics of the past, but as warnings for the future. They prove that knowledge is fragile, that even the most advanced societies can be erased from memory, and that history is a relentless tide, forever washing away the castles we build in the sand. The greatest mystery, then, is not what was lost to time, but what of our own world, our own knowledge, is destined to one day become just another unbelievable relic, lost to the ages.
Across the wind-swept plains of our planet, beneath the suffocating canopy of forgotten jungles, there are whispers. They are not carried on the wind, nor are they written on parchment that turns to dust. They are messages from a past so deep it has nearly been lost to time. Messages spoken in stone. We are taught that the story of humanity is one of linear progression, a tale carefully documented in scrolls and ancient texts. It's a neat, orderly timeline, leading from primitive beginnings to our complex modern world. But what if that written history is dangerously incomplete? What if it's merely the final chapter of a much, much older epic? Around the globe, a different kind of record exists, a library of monoliths. We see them in the colossal heads of the Olmec, the serene faces of Buddhas carved into mountainsides, and the stoic gazes of the Moai on Easter Island. Mainstream science often labels these impossible achievements as tombs, idols, or ceremonial markers. They are explained away as the product of brute force and a primitive faith. Yet, the closer we look, the more the questions compound. How were they carved with such impossible precision? How were they transported, sometimes across hundreds of miles of impassable terrain? Who were the artists, the engineers, the civilizations that possessed the will and the means to create them? These stone sentinels stand as a testament to a past we barely know, a past of profound mystery and forgotten genius. They challenge everything we thought we knew about our ancestors and about ourselves. So, today, we journey to the far corners of the earth to listen to their stories, to stand before the silent giants, the impossible relics, the mysterious statues that scientists still can't explain.
Our journey begins on a tiny triangular speck of volcanic rock adrift in the immense emptiness of the Pacific Ocean. This is Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, the most remote inhabited place on Earth. It's a land of rolling green hills, sheer volcanic cliffs, and a profound, palpable loneliness. And here, standing guard over this isolation, are the silent watchers, the Moai. Nearly 1,000 of them litter the landscape. These monolithic giants, some towering over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons, are a haunting presence. Carved from the island's volcanic tuff, they stand with deep-set eyes, long ears, and enigmatic expressions. But their most peculiar feature is their gaze. They do not look out to the vast sea, as one might expect from island sentinels. Instead, almost all of them stare inland, their backs to the ocean, as if watching over the ghosts of their creators. The mainstream academic explanation paints a tragic yet simple picture. The Rapa Nui people, having settled the island around 1200 AD, began an obsessive ritual of carving and erecting these statues to honor their deified ancestors. To transport them from the Rano Raraku quarry, it is said they felled the island's great palm forests, using the logs as rollers and sledges. This statue-building frenzy, according to the theory, became their undoing. In a classic tale of ecocide, they depleted their most vital resource. Without trees, they could no longer build seaworthy canoes for fishing. Their soil eroded, and their society spiraled into warfare, starvation, and eventual collapse. The story of Rapa Nui is often presented as a stark warning, a microcosm of what could happen to our own planet if we manage our resources unwisely. It's a neat, self-contained story of human folly. But is it the correct one? The closer one examines the evidence, the more this tidy narrative begins to fray. The sheer logistics of the log-rolling theory are staggering. The island's terrain is not flat. It is rugged, hilly, and uneven. To move an 80-ton statue miles across such a landscape would require an immense number of logs, a perfectly level track, and hundreds of people working in flawless unison. Some experiments have been attempted, but they have struggled to replicate the feat, even with smaller statues and ideal conditions. Then there is the issue of the largest Moai ever carved. Nicknamed El Gigante, it lies unfinished in the quarry, a gargantuan figure nearly 70 feet long. Its estimated weight is 270 tons. No rational archaeologist believes this titan could have ever been moved with ropes and logs. So why was it carved?
The Rapa Nui legends themselves contradict the official story. Their oral traditions do not speak of sledges or backbreaking labor. They say the statues walked. The elders claim that ancient priests used a divine power known as mana to command the Moai to move from the quarry to their platforms, or ahu. To archaeologists, this is mere folklore. But what if the legends are not metaphors, but memories of a forgotten technology? Some researchers have pointed to the intriguing possibility of acoustic levitation or sonic resonance. The idea, while speculative, is that specific sound frequencies, when properly harnessed, could drastically reduce the weight of a massive object, making it possible to move with minimal effort. Could the concept of mana have been a description of a lost science, an understanding of physics that has since vanished from the world? This idea of a forgotten technology, a mastery over the laws of nature, is not unique to Rapa Nui. The mystery deepens when we consider the collapse. Was the obsession with statue building truly the cause of their downfall? Or were the Moai a desperate attempt to avert a catastrophe we don't understand? Perhaps the Watchers were not just memorials, but functional objects, their purpose now lost to us. We are left with an undeniable enigma, a supposedly primitive, isolated society that quarried, carved, and transported nearly 1,000 colossal statues only to vanish into obscurity, leaving their creations to stare silently over a desolate landscape. The mystery of how a civilization could raise such giants only to fall echoes across the ocean. But what if, on the other side of this vast expanse, in the heart of a dense and humid jungle, another lost culture left behind clues that are even more inexplicable in the stoic faces of kings who seemingly came from another land?
From the isolated shores of the Pacific, our quest for answers takes us deep into the heart of another enigma, into the sweltering primeval jungles of the Mexican Gulf Coast. This is the Olmec heartland. Here, under a suffocating canopy of green, a civilization rose and vanished thousands of years before the Aztecs were even a memory. They left behind no written language we can decipher, but they did leave behind portraits of a truly impossible scale. In 1862, a farm worker exploring a dense thicket stumbled upon what he thought was a giant, overturned iron kettle buried in the earth. As he dug, a pair of solemn eyes and powerful lips emerged from the soil. It was not a kettle. It was a face. A 10-ton face carved from a single block of stone. Since then, 17 of these colossal heads have been discovered. Each is unique, wearing a distinctive helmet-like headdress, and each stares forward with an expression of serene, absolute authority. Archaeology tells us these are the faces of the Olmec, the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Flourishing between 1500 and 400 BC, they laid the foundation for all subsequent civilizations in the region, including the Maya and the Aztecs. The accepted theory is that these heads are realistic portraits of individual Olmec rulers, carved from massive basalt boulders. The source of this stone has been traced to the Tuxtla Mountains, a volcanic range over 100 kilometers away from the main Olmec centers like San Lorenzo. The official explanation for their transport is one of sheer human determination. Thousands of laborers dragging the multi-ton blocks on wooden sledges over land and floating them on massive balsa wood rafts down rivers. It's a testament, we are told, to the organizational power of these early kings. But a closer look at the logistics reveals a nearly insurmountable challenge. The Olmec possessed no beasts of burden, no wheeled vehicles, and no hard metal tools. The journey from the mountains was not a simple stroll, it was a treacherous passage through swamps, dense jungle, and across winding rivers. Could a civilization, at the very dawn of its existence, truly muster the engineering prowess to move 50-ton blocks across such an environment? The feat seems to strain the limits of their known technological capabilities to the breaking point. However, an even more profound mystery is etched into the faces themselves. Even more perplexing than how they were moved is who they depict. The features carved in the stone, the broad, flat noses, the thick, full lips, are not characteristic of the indigenous Amerindian people of the region. To many observers, past and present, they appear to be distinctly African.
This observation is the source of a fierce and ongoing debate. Mainstream archaeology flatly rejects the connection, arguing that the features are simply stylized portrayals of local rulers, perhaps depicting features of jaguars or other symbolic animals. Yet the portraits feel too individual, too human to be mere symbols. So why would the founding culture of Mesoamerica, the supposed ancestors of the Maya,
carve monumental portraits of rulers who looked like they came from an entirely different continent. This has led to the highly controversial theory of pre-Columbian contact. Could a sophisticated seafaring group from Africa have crossed the Atlantic thousands of years before Columbus, influencing or perhaps even establishing the Olmec civilization? While the idea is often dismissed as pseudo-archaeology, the stone faces remain stubbornly silent, refusing to conform to our neat models of ancient history. Like other enigmatic first civilizations around the globe, the Olmec seem to appear in the archaeological record with their complex culture already largely formed. They leave behind these incredible heads, intricate jade carvings, and the seeds of a calendar that would later be perfected by the Maya before mysteriously vanishing around 400 BC. Who were they? Were they a lost lineage of Native Americans whose physical traits have since disappeared? Or do these stone faces stand as irrefutable evidence of a forgotten chapter of global migration? A chapter that would force us to redraw the maps of the ancient world. The enigma of a people who don't seem to fit their own geography is a deeply unsettling one. But as we now travel across the Pacific, we find that another ancient culture, half a world away in modern-day China, left behind artifacts that are not just geographically out of place, they seem to be out of this world entirely.
From the enigmatic faces of the Americas, our journey now takes us east to the fertile plains of Songshan Province in China. For centuries, the official history of Chinese civilization was written in the north, along the banks of the Yellow River. It was there, we are told, that the Shang and Zhou dynasties forged the foundations of a great culture. The south, by comparison, was considered a remote, primitive backwater. Then, in 1986, an event occurred that would not just rewrite a chapter of Chinese history, it would tear the book apart. Workers at a brickyard, digging for clay, struck something hard. It wasn't rock. It was a pit filled with priceless treasures that had been deliberately broken and buried for 3,000 years. As archaeologists began to excavate, they unearthed a trove of artifacts that defied all logic and expectation. Over 1,000 objects of jade, gold, and burned elephant tusks. And then they found the bronzes. These were not the ritual vessels of the northern Shang. These were colossal, otherworldly figures. They had angular faces with vast, protruding eyes, some shaped like cylinders, others with pupils like staring diamonds. They had enormous, stylized ears, listening for secrets from another world. They looked like nothing ever found in China or anywhere else on Earth. The accepted historical model simply had no place for Songxing Tui. The sheer scale and technical sophistication of the bronze casting were equal to, and in some cases surpassed, that of the Shang dynasty. The artifacts included a stunning 8-foot-tall bronze statue of a standing man, the largest of its kind ever found. They uncovered a magnificent bronze spirit tree, nearly 13 feet high, with intricate branches, birds, and dragons. This was not the work of a primitive tribe. This was the heart of a powerful, wealthy, and technologically advanced Bronze Age civilization that had flourished, completely unknown to history, at the very same time as the Shang. The implications were staggering. The story of ancient China was not a single linear progression from one source. Here was evidence of a parallel, equally brilliant culture that had been utterly lost to time. But unlike the Shang, who left behind oracle bones covered in early Chinese writing, the people of Songxing Dui left behind nothing. Not a single character, only these silent, haunting figures. This silence forces the artifacts themselves to speak,
but their language is one of profound mystery. What or who are we looking at? The academic consensus suggests these are representations of gods, myths, or powerful shaman kings. The bizarre features, it is argued, are not literal but symbolic, intended to convey supernatural power, eyes that could see into other realms, ears that could hear the voices of spirits. The masks, perhaps, were mounted on wooden bodies and dressed in ceremonial robes.
But to many, these explanations feel inadequate. The features are too specific, too consistent across multiple sculptures to be mere fantasy. They do not resemble any known iconography from ancient China. This has led to more speculative questions. Could the artists of Songqingdui have been depicting something they had actually seen? Were they creating portraits of their gods? Or were they creating portraits of visitors, beings not of this world? The alien-like appearance is so striking that it's impossible to ignore the possibility that we are looking at something far stranger than just a forgotten religion. Ultimately, Songqingdui represents a completely independent branch of the human story, a civilizational island that rose to incredible heights of artistic and technical achievement before being completely erased. They were a people who created a universe of imagery unlike any other, who held beliefs and saw a world we cannot even begin to comprehend. We are left with a chilling set of questions. Who were the people of Songqingdui? What gods did they worship with these magnificent and terrifying bronzes? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, why did they, around 1200 BC, methodically smash their sacred treasures, burn them, and bury them in deep pits before completely vanishing from the face of the earth? The discovery of a lost civilization that rivals the known greats is a humbling revelation. It suggests our history is filled with immense gaps. But what if we were to find something that doesn't just challenge the map of ancient history, but challenges the very timeline itself? What if we found proof of high culture and monumental construction not from a lost kingdom, but from a lost era of humanity, long before the first cities were ever meant to exist?
Our search for answers has led us from lost kingdoms to forgotten peoples, but all have existed within the familiar framework of civilization. Now we journey to a place that rips that framework to shreds. We arrive at an unassuming, rounded hilltop in southeastern Turkey. For millennia, locals called it Göbekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill. It was a place of quiet pilgrimage, believed to be the resting place of a long-forgotten saint. But in 1994, the late German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt looked at the hill and saw something else. He saw the subtle work of human hands on a massive scale. And when he began to dig, he uncovered a structure that, according to our history books, simply should not exist. He found the world's first temple. Not a village, not a tomb, but a sprawling complex of massive circular enclosures defined by enormous T-shaped pillars of carved limestone, each weighing up to 15 tons and standing 18 feet tall. To understand the earth-shattering importance of this discovery, we must first remember the story we have always been told about our own origins. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived in small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers. Our existence was defined by the constant search for food. Then, around 10,000 years ago, everything changed with the Neolithic Revolution. We learned to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. This agricultural breakthrough allowed us to create a food surplus, which in turn allowed us to abandon the nomadic life and build permanent settlements. From these first villages, cities grew. With cities came social hierarchy, specialized labor, and eventually the luxury of complex organized religion and the ability to construct monumental architecture. The formula was simple and linear.
Agriculture led to settlements, which led to civilization and temples. It was the bedrock of modern archaeology. And then, Göbekli Tepe was dated. The results that came back from the labs were not just surprising, they were an academic bombshell. The deepest, oldest layers of the site were dated to an astonishing 9600 BC. Let that sink in. This is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is by a staggering margin the oldest megalithic structure ever found on Earth. And most importantly, it was built by people who had not yet invented pottery, who had not smelted metal, who had no writing, and who, crucially, had not yet developed agriculture. The people who quarried, transported, and intricately carved these 15-ton pillars were hunter-gatherers. This single fact inverts the entire timeline of human history. The long-held formula was wrong. Here was proof that so-called primitive nomads were capable of incredible feats of organization, engineering, and symbolic expression. At Göbekli Tepe, the temple came first. Klaus Schmidt himself proposed a revolutionary new theory. What if it was the desire to build this sacred gathering place that kick-started civilization itself? The immense effort of construction would have required different bands of hunters to cooperate, to organize, and, most importantly, to stay in one place for long periods. The need to feed this massive workforce may have been the very catalyst that spurred the invention of farming. In this new model, it was our search for meaning, our quest for the divine, that gave birth to the modern world. The temple led to agriculture, which led to cities.
But what was the purpose of this great temple? The pillars are not crude blocks. They are covered in masterful, high-relief carvings of animals, snakes, boars, foxes, and menacing scorpions. Vultures feature prominently, often associated with death and excarnation. Some researchers, noting that Göbekli Tepe was built immediately after the end of the last ice age, a time of violent climate change and mass extinctions known as the Younger Dryas, theorize the site is an astronomical observatory. Could the animal symbols represent constellations, a map of the sky created by the survivors of a global cataclysm to preserve the knowledge of a world that was lost? Perhaps the most profound mystery is what happened to it. After more than 1,000 years of use, Göbekli Tepe was not conquered or destroyed. Around 8000 BC, its creators deliberately and painstakingly buried their entire creation. They backfilled their magnificent temple with millions of cubic feet of earth, rubble, and bone, preserving it perfectly for the next 10 millennia. Why would a culture bury its most sacred cathedral? Was it to protect a great secret? Or to create a time capsule, a message in a bottle for a distant future that had forgotten its own deep past? The act of burying a treasure to preserve it for eternity speaks to a profound vision. But while the builders of Göbekli Tepe sought to preserve a memory, another, much later civilization sought to build an army to conquer not just the future, but death itself.
The desire to preserve a legacy, to leave a message for the future, is a powerful human impulse. But what if that impulse is taken to its absolute extreme? What if a ruler sought not just to be remembered, but to build an empire that could defy death itself? Our journey now leads us to the heart of China, to a discovery that revealed the scale of such an ambition. In March of 1974, a group of farmers in Lintong County were digging a well to combat a drought. As their shovels sank into the dry earth, they struck something hard. It was not a rock. It was the fired clay head of a man, with realistic eyes, a carefully sculpted mustache, and an impassive stare that had not seen the light of day for over 2 millennia. the farmers had unknowingly stumbled upon one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. They had found the advance guard of a silent subterranean army. As archaeologists began to excavate, the true mind-boggling scale of the find was revealed. Pit after pit contained the spectral ranks of a life-sized military force. Thousands of infantrymen, archers, charioteers, and cavalry horses, all crafted from terracotta, stood in battle formation, ready to march for their emperor. History tells us this ghost army belongs to one man, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. A brilliant, visionary, and utterly ruthless ruler from the 3rd century BC, he was a man of grand ambitions. He standardized China's language and currency, began construction of the Great Wall, and infamously burned countless books to erase the history of his rivals. But his greatest obsession was his own mortality. He dispatched expeditions in search of the mythical elixir of life and spent decades planning his own journey into the afterlife. The Terracotta Army was to be his eternal honor guard, a force of over 8,000 soldiers built by a reported 700,000 conscripted artisans and laborers. It was a perfect replica of his imperial legions, meant to protect his soul and allow him to continue his conquests in the next world. This explanation, however, barely scratches the surface of the mystery, for these are not mass-produced identical statues. A close examination reveals a level of artistry and technology that is profoundly challenging. Every single soldier, from the highest-ranking general to the humblest archer, has a unique face. They are individual portraits with distinct hairstyles, expressions, and features. How did the artisans of the Qin dynasty achieve this level of mass-produced individuality?
When they were first unearthed, the warriors were not the monochrome figures we see today. They were painted in brilliant, vibrant lacquers of purple, red, and green, which tragically flaked away and faded within minutes of being exposed to the air. We are seeing only the pale ghosts of their original splendor. Most astonishingly, their bronze weapons, swords, spears, and crossbow triggers were found to be in pristine condition, still razor-sharp after 2,200 years, buried in the damp earth. Analysis revealed that they were coated in a thin, protective layer of chromium dioxide. This advanced chrome plating is a technology that scientists in the West only developed in the 1920s. How did Qin Shi Huang's craftsmen master a technique that was 2 millennia ahead of its time? And yet, all of this, the thousands of unique soldiers, the lost colors, the futuristic technology, is merely the opening act. This entire world-famous army is just the perimeter defense for the true secret, the tomb of the emperor himself, a 250-foot-tall, pyramid-shaped mound that lies sealed and untouched just a mile away. What lies inside that mound has been the subject of legend for centuries. Our only written account comes from the Han Dynasty historian Sima Qian, who described a subterranean palace of unimaginable scale. He wrote that the emperor's sarcophagus floats in a tomb chamber that is a perfect microcosm of his empire. The ceiling is a map of the heavens, studded with pearls to represent the stars. The floor is a map of his earthly domain, with China's great rivers and oceans replicated in channels of flowing liquid mercury, made to circulate by mechanical means. And to protect it all, Sima Qian wrote of deadly traps, crossbows and arrows rigged to fire automatically at any intruder. For 2,000 years, this was dismissed as a fantastical legend,
but modern science has revealed that the legend may be terrifyingly real. Scientific probes of the soil in the tomb mound have detected levels of mercury that are hundreds of times higher than the surrounding area. The rivers of mercury are almost certainly real, which gives terrifying credence to the stories of the traps that guard them. The unopened tomb is a perfect time capsule, a sealed world from an emperor who tried to reboot history. What lost knowledge, what priceless treasures, what secrets of his advanced technology are locked inside with him? The Chinese government, out of respect for the emperor and fear of destroying the tomb's fragile contents upon opening it, has forbidden its excavation. The mystery is right there, beneath our feet, but it remains tantalizingly out of reach. This ghostly army, guarding its eternal secret, presents us with the ultimate archaeological paradox, a mystery we might have the power to solve, but choose not to. It reminds us that for every answer we unearth, countless more remain buried, silent, and waiting. The statues we have seen on our journey are not just objects of stone and clay, they are question marks, each one challenging the story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we came from.
Our journey has taken us across the globe and deep into the annals of forgotten time, seeking answers from storytellers who speak not in words, but in stone. On the lonely shores of Rapa Nui, we stood before the silent watchers, questioning how a supposedly primitive society could command giants to walk. In the humid jungles of Mesoamerica, we saw the faces of an unknown people, their features a profound riddle of ancestry and origin. From a buried pit in China, the otherworldly masks of Sansingdui stared back, the haunting relics of a brilliant civilization that history had completely forgotten. In the Anatolian highlands, we found Göbekli Tepe, a temple older than civilization itself, a sacred place that rewrites the very first chapter of our settled story. And finally, in the heart of China, a ghost army of clay stands eternal guard over a tomb of impossible secrets and lost technologies, a mystery we dare not disturb. Individually, each of these is a fascinating puzzle, but taken together, they form a mosaic, a picture of the ancient world that is profoundly different from the one found in our textbooks. These are not just beautiful artifacts to be admired in a museum. They are data points of defiance. They are pieces of hard evidence that refuse to fit the simple, linear narrative of human progress, a steady march from primitive hunter to sophisticated city dweller. These statues speak of impossible engineering, of lost artistic traditions, of advanced scientific knowledge, and of timelines that simply should not exist. It forces us to confront the most fundamental question of all. What if we are a species with amnesia? What if the great civilizations we call ancient, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Chinese, were not the dawn of human innovation, but were instead the heirs of a legacy? What if they were rebuilding upon the faint memories of a far older, far more advanced global chapter of the human story, one that was nearly erased by a great cataclysm deep in our past? In this light, these statues are no longer just art. They become echoes. They are the fragmented memories of a lost world, the last remaining signposts from a history we were never meant to forget. The ground beneath our feet is not just soil and rock. It is a library of unread books. The story of humanity is not finished and bound. It is a living investigation, and the most astonishing discoveries are still waiting. The silent storytellers of stone have not yet revealed all their secrets. They wait patiently in deserts, jungles, and beneath the hills of our modern world. They are a permanent challenge to our certainty, a timeless reminder that the human story is far older, far stranger, and far more magnificent than we have ever dared to imagine. The greatest chapters
may be the ones we have yet to unearth.